Hello, good evening, everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We have people joining from all continents, it seems, this evening, so that's good. Just checking that our presenter is ready and that the mic is working. So we'll have a quick mic check.
Yes, good afternoon, morning, evening, night. I am ready. I will.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I'm seeing some familiar faces that I haven't seen for a long time joining us. Nice to see you all. Okay, we'll just wait a couple more minutes and then we'll begin. 2 more minutes. Okay, I see our numbers are steadily climbing, and I think we can begin now. So, on behalf of the Institutional Advancement Division at the UWI Regional Headquarters, I'd like to welcome you all to our inaugural Top Tier Talk. I am Celia Davidson Francis. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations for the University of the West Indies, and I'm responsible for the global alumni population. I'm very excited to bring you our first ever Top Tier Talk, which is designed to allow our graduates to hear from top UWI management about a topic of their choice that they feel is important and wish to share with you. These sessions will also give you graduates and UWI Pelicans an opportunity to interact with UWI executives, and they are a special part of our Soft and Life Skills series, which is a part of our Pelican Perks Advantage program. I know that you are really wanting to hear from our keynote speaker, and so we'll go right ahead now and introduce you to her by way of a short bibliography. Biography. Dr. Luz Longsworth is the Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UWI Open Campus, which is the online and flexible learning campus of the UWI. She also holds the portfolio of Pro Vice Chancellor Global Affairs. She holds a doctorate in Business Administration in Higher Education Management from the University of Bath in the United Kingdom, a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish and French, first class honors, as well as a Master of Business Administration with a concentration in marketing from the University of the West Indies at Mona, and a Master of Arts degree in Hispanic Studies from Queen's University, Ontario, Canada. Her research focus is in the fields of virtual leadership in higher education, leadership development, and organizational transformation and change. Dr. Longsworth currently chairs several boards, including the UWI Press Board and the board of the UWI Open Campus Early Childhood Centers of Excellence. Keenly community-oriented, Dr. Longsworth has worked with at-risk youths in Western Jamaica, Belize, Barbados, and the British Virgin Islands, as well as served on the boards of several community-based organizations. As an honorary fellow of the Commonwealth of Learning since 2016, she is also involved in mentoring young women across the Commonwealth. She is fluent in Spanish with a good knowledge of French and German, and enjoys foreign language films, practicing yoga and Tai Chi, and is a voracious reader of biographies, historical novels, Latin American poetry, and leadership and inspirational literature. And I know that you will find her inspirational and extremely relevant this evening, or afternoon, or morning, depending where you are, as she talks about her topic, which is leadership in the UWI in a time of disruption. So over to you, Dr. Longsworth. We are really excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Celia. And I will be very informal instead of the Mrs. Davidson Francis. But I want to greet all of my fellow alumni of the UWI, of course, and to say how honored I am to, well, should I be honored or should I be a bit scared that I am the first person to kick off this series? That's a lot of pressure, but I will try my best. And I do want to thank you for inviting me to this new series of top tier talks. And I believe it's an excellent idea so that we can have our alumni interacting in a more visceral way with the executives of the university, and feel free to ask any questions. As Celia indicated, my topic this evening is leadership in the UWI in a time of disruption. And I will, of course, combine my loves, my love of leadership study and practice, and my love of the UWI, and of course of my campus, the open campus. So you will, of course, excuse me if I seem to be focusing a lot on the open campus, but that is the campus that I know, I love. I have worked with the open campus and its predecessor, the School of Continuing Studies, for over 17 years, but worked with other parts of the university for at least another 20 years. So I'll get right into it. I think you can see my screen. I hope so. And I will try to put this on presentation mode. It doesn't always work quickly, but it will eventually. So we're going to speak today about leadership in the University of the West Indies in a time of disruption. And really what I want to do is to share with you, not a lecture, but really just my personal experiences, the experiences of my colleague leaders, who many of whom you will hear from in future top tier talks, but my colleagues in the open campus, and how we have been coping and with the changes, the disruptions that have been occurring in our environment, in the region, in the university, and in the world. So as you can see, I have two images on the first slide. And the first image that I know everybody will recognize is, of course, the iconic, unfortunately, iconic image of COVID. But the second image, as far as I'm concerned, is much larger, and that is the resilience and the ability to overcome the various challenges that COVID and other similar incidents have really wreaked havoc on our university, our region, our students, and yourselves, many of you, I'm sure. And I use this one because this was an ad that our marketing office put out soon after the pandemic, and everyone was moving online, as you saw. But we had been online for a long time. And the tagline, "We got this," is really what inspires me when I start speaking about leadership in the university in a time of disruption. So just to set some context, I am going to define what I consider to be disruption, and I call it really disruptive change, because all disruption leads to some change, right? And I use the definition by Clayton Christensen, who many of you will probably know, coined the term when he was looking at industries that were being disrupted by technology. And he spoke about disruptive change as events that affect an organization in a fundamental way, resulting in usually irreversible changes to the way the organization operates. So, he was talking about, for instance, the book industry with the introduction of an Amazon, or the taxi industry with the introduction of Uber and Lyft, the hotel industry with the introduction of Airbnb. So we've seen that many industries have been disrupted over the years. And some of you, I'm sure, will recognize some of these things. How many of us remember the ye old alarm clock where you had to press down, the top so that it would stop alarming when you wanted not to wake you up? The camera, that size telephone, I think some of us still have one of those, and the laptop. And all of these have been replaced by one simple device, a mobile phone. And that has changed industries. It has changed the way people do business. It has revolutionized many, many approaches to the way we live. But there are some other things that cause disruption. And if I can get my next slide, some man-made disruptive changes. And, this first one, many of us may not really think about it, but the 21st century really started in 2001 with the World Trade Center destruction, the terrorist attack, and it changed the way we did business everywhere. It affected airline travel. It affected how businesses worked. It affected how banks worked. It affected industries such as the offshore financial services industry in many of our countries that were actually obliterated by the new anti-terrorism regulations, anti-money laundering. All of those have changed the way we operate in this region. For us in the UWI, and especially in the UWI Open Campus, our campus has been called the most resilient, but it is also the most vulnerable, because our region is vulnerable to a lot of natural disasters. And indeed, every year, I'm only picking out one or two, but in the period that I have worked in the Open Campus, I would say pretty much every one of our countries has experienced some kind of natural disaster over the last 16, 17 years that I've been in this campus. And I wanted to point out to some of those disasters that have actually created what Christensen speaks about, an irreversible change in how we do business. And the first one that really comes to mind is what happened in 2017 with Hurricanes Irma and Maria. At one point in that year, we had 9 of our sites on lockdown or destroyed. And I was the principal. You can imagine how our staff felt. These pictures that you're seeing on your screen are taken by our staff member who went to the site in Dominica the morning after Maria passed. And this is what he met, and these are the images he sent to us from Dominica. And as you can imagine, we thought, many people thought that this was the end for us. So this, however, created a lot of change, and I'm going to speak about it, and change that has, while it was hard and while it was heartbreaking and painful, many of the changes that we had to implement in order to survive have really, really been important in coping with the more recent disasters of COVID in particular. Another example, again, is Hurricane Dorian, which was in 2019. Again, another super Category 5 storm, but it did something quite unusual, which was to sit over the Bahamas, the Grand Bahama in particular, and Abaco Islands for 3 days at intense speeds of 4 and 5. And again, really wiping out, villages, townships, and livelihoods in those countries, in those parts of the Bahamas. So again, nature. And then much more recently, just a couple of weeks ago, the eruption of La Soufrière in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And this, of course, is one of the countries that we serve within the open campus. We have over 500 students, open campus students in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And in fact, we UE-wide, there are over 1,000 students studying in all of the campuses. So this is a country that has quite a UWI presence. And we were so proud that it was our Seismic Research Center that provided the guidance to save lives. But this has again created a tremendous disruption for our campus and for the university, as students and their families and our staff cope with the dislocation caused by this. And then, of course, what we didn't even bank for was the ashfall that has blanketed not just St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but Barbados, and has also created a disruptive event in Barbados, as our staff, the university has had to close down the Cave Hill campus. Our staff are back to working from home. And the cleanup of this is a major challenge, especially as La Soufrière keeps erupting. So, and then the big one, which we've been coping with since last year, March, of course, COVID-19, and how that has changed so much. So many ways that we used to do things have been changed. But I'm going to speak of how the campus has led in change, and how the leadership of the university and of the UE Open Campus has really reacted and not just responded, but been proactive in preparing our staff, our students, and getting us through these crises. So what has all of this caused? From 2008, our economies in the region have been in recession. We've been slow to come out of recession. All of these annual storms and floods and so on have led to continued economic recession. We've had incidents where countries have 200% of their GDP wiped out, 50% of GDP by a storm. So the economic recession for the region has been problematic. And that has led, of course, to difficulties in providing funding for higher education institutions generally, and certainly for the UWI. So that is another element of disruption in terms of our sources of revenue for the university. And of course, with economic recession, sources of revenue for our students who have to pay fees. With COVID, of course, we've seen a rapid move to online learning, and that has been tremendously difficult for all institutions that did not have an online learning background. But luckily, your open campus did, and we have been able to support our colleagues, and I'll speak a little bit about that. But that has been a real seed change for higher education, this move to online learning. And I'll share with you something of a joke that I'd read in an article about 3 or 4 years ago, where the author of the article said that if somebody had gone to sleep in the 1700s and woke up in 2018, the article, and he would not recognize any industry. He wouldn't recognize the automobile industry. He wouldn't recognize any industry except higher education, and that he could still walk into a university and recognize that it was a university, because universities were so behind in how they adopted the technologies. So online learning has been a result of COVID, particularly in terms of its widespread use and acceptance. But the open campus, thankfully, was ahead of the curve. The university, as universities should be, was already forward thinking in 2008 when it started the open campus. And of course, the society is changing, and the type of jobs we've seen in various reports from the World Economic Forum and so on, that the types of jobs that are needed for the world are changing. Jobs are disappearing, and even since COVID, many professions have been threatened, and new ones have arisen. So we in the university, we need to be aware that this is changing the way we do business, and we also have to therefore respond to that change. We have to lead it. We can't have it actually just affecting us. So if we reflect on all of these things that have impacted, and now I go to the open campus specifically, but the university as a whole, but I'm going to become more personal now, as you know, as we're speaking among colleagues and friends. For me, on reflection, the keys to leading successfully in disruption, I have personally put together 4 elements that have worked for me. And I've put the acronym CARE because in essence, that's what I believe makes a difference, that you care enough to ensure that you are able to lead people through these difficult times and to help them lead themselves. Let me not be foolish that it's only the leader that helps to change. Everyone has a big part to play in how we overcome disruptive change. So the first one is courage, and I'll speak a little bit about courage. The second one is attitude, and I embrace the sense of gratitude. So each time we have our leadership meetings in the open campus, we start with 5 minutes of gratitude giving. We open it up to all of the leaders and we say, what are you grateful for today? And when we first started, it was a little, embarrassing, I think, for some people. But now there are people who can't wait to say how grateful they are for their team or for, someone coming through for them in order to get something done. Sometimes it's just gratitude for life, especially in times like these. And this has helped us to bond as a leadership team. And then, of course, resilience, and I'll spend some time on resilience and empathy, because without empathy, you are not able to understand what the other person is going through, and therefore not able to help them to go through it and to get to the other side. So what does resilience look like? And I'll speak quickly to that. Here you see a photograph that is an iconic photograph. And my colleague, Dr. Severin, reminded me of this recently, this picture, because he's in the picture. He's, of course, in the orange shorts. And this was taken right after Maria in Dominica. And I showed you, I think earlier, the picture of the sign on the ground. And I had gone to Dominica to just check on the staff about 10 days after the storm, and when I could finally get there. And they were cleaning up the location, but the sign was still on the ground. And I was cheeky enough to say to the men there, let's raise the sign, let's push the sign back up, And I think they all looked at me as if I was a little bit crazy, but they did it. And they propped the sign up against the roofless building that you see in the background there. But within a few minutes, people were passing on the road. There's a road that runs by there. And they stopped and they looked at the sign and they said, oh, so when is the university opening up again? And that made me smile, because in the midst of what was total devastation of the entire country, that little bit of hope was so important and galvanized our staff and our students to feel that there was a possibility that we would be able to come back, but not necessarily come back as I say, but to bounce forward after we had our recovery. And when I say bounce forward, I'm going to just share this book with you. It has been, for me, a very inspirational book. It's called Bounce Forward, The Extraordinary Resilience of Leadership by L. Alison Napolitano. And very quickly, just to share with you her model of resilience or of bouncing forward, which I have embraced and adopted in my own practice of leadership. She speaks of the three R's: relationships, renewal, and resonance. And of course, you have to have leadership core capacities. You have to have those so-called hard skills. But she points to those three things that are very important when an organization is going through a crisis or when a leader is going through a crisis. And the first one is relationships. And to remember that first and foremost, people matter. So when COVID hit, for example, it was our people that the leadership team turned their attention to first of all. Yes, the bottom line and all of the things that you would normally be worried about, but we wanted to make sure our staff were safe, that they were out of harm's way, that our students were safe. And this has been what we do in each of our crises, that first, your people. Then, of course, develop your support networks. Who are the people? Our alumni. Thank you so much, alumni, because you always, after each of these crises, the first person I often hear from is Celia or Elizabeth Buchanan Hine to say, how can we help? The alumni want to know. And sometimes we're even too slow for you. And those are the kinds of support networks that we are so grateful for in terms of building resilient leadership. And be supportive of others. So the team has to support each other. The second R in that model is resonance. You can't just sit where you are. Once you're sure that everyone is okay, then you have to move people to action. What are we going to change? How are we going to get through this together? What are the things that we have to put in place in order to get through these things? And of course, as the leader, you have to regulate your emotions. You have to acknowledge them, as my colleague Cecile Minot would tell me. But still, how you respond, how you as a leader out there responds is important in terms of giving your team that support and that hope, which I'll speak of. Help other persons to regulate theirs. People are tense. In COVID, we have noticed, and I'm worried still about, an impending mental health crisis because people are extraordinarily tense. They're extraordinarily on edge. And that leads sometimes to some very extreme behaviors that we've noticed in students and staff, and that we understand, however, comes from the stress. So then our relationship with them does not become, aggressive or not understanding. We regulate how we respond. And then transform adversity into positive action. And finally, renewal. Look for some level of work-life balance, feed your physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual self. Take care of yourself and take care and ensure that your other leaders take care of themselves. So I have adopted this, and I know that many of our leaders in the open campus and the university have adopted this model even without knowing that they're doing that. But what I want to share with you very quickly, as I know I'm probably running a little out of time, is how in all of what has happened in the open campus, how we were able to still, and how we are able to still move forward in delivering on the promises that we had made to our students, to our staff, to our governments, to our region. And I really want to give credit to the vision of our Vice Chancellor in creating this framework of the AAA strategy, because even in the time of disruptive change, there was this core of stability, of guidance that allowed us, even if we had to bob and weave a little bit and change the way we did things, it guided us in terms of the overall principles of access, alignment, and agility. And so quickly, just to share a few of the things that our leadership was able to accomplish in the midst of disruptive change, and some of the changes we made because of the disruptions. Here you see our past and first principal spoke of this as a campus for the times, and it is indeed a campus for the times because of our robust online environment. So how were we resilient in the midst of COVID-19? Well, immediately I said we formed an emergency committee. There was a university-wide one and there was a UE Open Campus one, and that first focused on how to keep our staff and students safe, which included home-based work arrangements for all of our staff, deploying them back to home, sheltering at home, but also with equipment that could help them to continue to work. And I'll tell you this, that the campus had a home-based work policy in place from 2015. And that's why, sometimes hardships are good for you because we had put that in because we were running out of physical space and didn't have the funds to build new offices or to rent new offices. So we did come up with a home-based work arrangement for some staff. And we did have a policy in place that we were able to tweak, expand, and put in place in the blink of an eye. So in a way, this is one of the things that has come out of disruption. We were able to train, as I mentioned, our sister campuses. We trained over almost 1,000 lecturers from UE in how to I love the word, pivot quickly into remote teaching. We also reached out and trained for free over 700 educators across the region and in other parts of in the Eastern Caribbean and in other parts of the region as well. And how, with all of that happening, we were still able, with the flexibility, with the care of our staff, and with the understanding of our students and staff, we were still able to get everyone through the year after COVID. And people were able to complete their programs on time. It required agility, it required us adjusting, but we were able to do it. And we didn't see any loss of student numbers. In fact, we continued to grow in the open campus. When many institutions around the world were losing students, we were actually continuing on a growth path. And you can see that by the numbers there, 2019-20, we still grew by quite a good percentage. And this is also our continuing and professional education center. We see that their growth has also continued despite COVID, and that's because of how we were able to respond to ensuring that we could really have business continuity. So in the area of access, we were very pleased that we were able to manage that, and not just manage it, but to excel and even to innovate, because we had our first all virtual graduation. And that was a tremendous success. We had more students than we'd ever had in the face-to-face graduations presenting themselves. And it was an amazing, amazing event. And I really have to praise our registrar and her team and our IT team for the work they did along with UETV. And we continue to salute our alumni. We still gave out our Pelican Awards. This was a year before when as Jamaican said, when outside was still keeping before COVID. This was the year before in Antigua and Barbuda. But we did continue to do our Pelican Awards even in the face of COVID. And the other A for alignment is how we as a campus respond to the needs of our communities. And surprisingly, even with the disruptions, or perhaps because of the disruptions, we were even more active. We had as a target having 7 engagements with our industry partners. But because of the strength of our online environment, we actually had 65 in the year engagements with private sector partners, government, academic conferences, seminars, symposia. We did all of those online. I'm just going to scroll through these so you can see an example of the kinds of lectures, of partnerships that we had. Here you see one on decolonizing the education system, put on by the Hugh Shearer Labor Studies Institute and the National Council on Reparations, a talk that I gave to a partner with quite a wide Indian community from India. And we did so many of these that focused on the pandemic, the wellness and well-being, and so on. So we were actually, because of this disruption, able to develop a whole new line of business, so to speak, of collaborating with partners for webinars, because we had the technical expertise, we have the organizational expertise, and we've become a sought after partner in this particular area. In the area of agility, again, we didn't allow COVID to make us lie down and die, and our marketing department put on maybe the very first ever online recruitment fairs, and we've been followed by our competitors ever since then. And this, I am sure, helped us to keep our student numbers. And our very energetic marketing and communications manager, Mr. Cleveland Sam, has started an entire series of taking us to the world with different programs when we talk access, as he calls it. And you see him here speaking about our sporting programs, about our science collaborations, and so on. In terms of our staff, again, we took advantage of the issues that we were having with COVID, with people staying at home. And we put on a slew of trainings for staff, and not only just training in the area of things like occupational health and safety, but also some personal webinars that would help staff to deal with some of the issues that they were facing, such as discussing COVID-19 with children, introduction to progressive muscle relaxation, music healing your soul. We did a whole poetry and writing series as part of the health and wellness elements of our care for our staff. However, where were times very hard and still are? Our financial challenges, of course. And this is an area of disruption that we now are grappling with, and we now have to change the way we finance ourselves, that is Open Campus and the university generally. And so we found that what COVID has done for us is really to bring even harder financial challenges, much more difficult to collect student fees and government receivables. This leads to the impairments on our balance sheet, but we still have staff that we have to pay and take care of. So these are problems. But I can assure you that our campus over the years, we have, out of difficulty, we have learned how to manage well within our budgets. And again, this is how disruption can make you stronger, because we have always had difficulty in collecting what has been promised to the campus over the years. You can see in the orange line is what we actually spend, and the blue line is what we were budgeted to spend. So this is over the last 10 years. So of course, when COVID came, we understood and we knew what was upon us, but it has been difficult. Here you will see, for example, the orange line again shows the growth in the campus's tuition and our focus on earning our own fees. And the blue is what was promised in terms of government contributions, and the purple is what was actually committed, what was actually received over the years. But again, in terms of disruption, I guess as they say, what doesn't kill you fattens you, but I'm not sure fatten in this case is the best word. So out of COVID and all of these various incidents, we have now begun a reimagining of our campus. And of course, we've had to reduce our budgets and our expenditure, and we're doing so in several ways. Energy conservation, we're doing a strategic workforce review because we really want to unearth the talent that we have in the campus and put them in the best places to ensure the campus's survival and growth. We are re-engineering our academic and administrative processes. And of course, we're much more online now, so we don't spend as much on travel. The fallout has been some of the special initiatives that the campus had hoped to implement over the last year or two have been put on hold because there is no funding for these at the moment. So our library and information services to be expanded, renovating some of the sites. I know some of you will know that some of our sites badly need some infrastructural improvement. And one that is near and dear to my heart, implementing accessibility software for visual and hearing impaired users. But again, the Open Campus is moving ahead, and it is not allowing the crises to kill us, but rather to unleash innovation and out of the box thinking. So we've formed an internal sustainability and transformation task force, and they have been coming up with fantastic ideas as to how we can get our campus to be a lot more agile and lean. The leadership team meets weekly, and the primary focus is on our stabilization and transformation. We've reached out to our corporate community, remember to get networks of support, and we have a team that advises us. Of course, the strategic workforce review, and to really cap it all, the establishment of an endowment fund for the Open Campus by the alumni. I know led by Sandra Griffith Carrington, Celia Davidson Francis, Noel Morgan, and all of you who are already starting to donate. This is an amazing effort, and I thank you so much. We all thank you for what you are doing and what you will be doing to build the campus in the future. And of course, we have tremendous potential in various revenue generation projects. Many of you will have heard of our 25 million US dollar grant guarantee, not in cash, but we are receiving the equivalent in equipment, in licenses, and in training, some small amounts in cash, to develop an augmented and virtual reality laboratory, which is going to take our online learning, not just for the Open Campus, but for the whole university and the region into the future. And we're very excited about that. We're also excited about going into Guyana and opening another Open Campus site, which will be funded by the government of Guyana. And we're very excited about the longer term future of moving into the global environment. So you can see that you can't remain where you are, even while you must be in the present, but you also have to look at the future, because it's in the future that gives us the hope. And here you have, as I mentioned, the Guyana strategy, and of course the partnership with Eon Reality, which has tremendous, tremendous opportunities for us. And as we speak on leadership, and as I end, I just want to share, because they're not here with me, the fact that, for the last year, these are some of the core leaders. There are some new persons in this team now, but these are some of the core people who have led this campus. And leadership is not about one person at all. Leadership is about everyone. Everybody is a leader, but these individuals have been tremendous. And the skill sets that they have been, they've been adaptable and flexible. They're lifelong learners, energetic and enthusiastic, visionary, communicative, empathetic. They've been coaching, mentoring staff. And we always remember that to be a leader, you have to have followers. And that, in a sense, without somebody choosing you to be a leader, you are nothing, you're not really a leader. So we have to remember that. But we do know there are some challenges, unrealistic expectations from some, and burnout and demands on your energy and health. For us, sometimes you have to know when to step aside and let new leaders emerge and move forward. That is an important element of leadership, knowing when to allow others to lead. And then I end by saying, in times of disruption, leaders must primarily bring hope. And I quote one of the persons whose work I have read a lot, and I'm actually trained as a John Maxwell trainer, where he says, it takes no courage to be an optimist, but it takes a great deal of courage to have hope. You need to believe you can make a difference no matter who you are, where you are, and with whatever you have. You must have hope and believe in yourself. And this is from his most recent book, Change Your World. And one of the things that I would say is that in UE, we have hope because we are making a difference in the lives of thousands and thousands of young people who are the ones that are going to make the real changes in this region. I thank you so much for your generous listening to this talk, and I look forward to your questions and your comments. And there you have our students really celebrating, and that's why we do what we do as leaders. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very, very much, Luz. And I know that many people, we've been getting comments and questions, but I just wanted to touch on the point that you made as you ended about how important it is to have hope. And this made me think of a couple of the things that you mentioned that I think have had a great impact on the region. And that is the core strength, I believe, of the open campus, because as you are online and have adapted so quickly to the situation we now find ourselves in, I think many, many more people are coming to the open campus. And you mentioned that the open campus assisted over 1,000 of our UE staff to pivot very quickly so that they could adapt to remote learning. And for some, it was something that is totally new to them. So this was a very important factor. And then in addition, the UWI Open Campus was also able to help 700 educators for free across the region, which shows the impact that the university has. So I don't know if you want to say anything further about that in terms of the impact that you continue to have. But I do want to point out that we did have a comment that from Carmen Nicholas in Florida, saying that she's delighted to hear that enrollment was not affected negatively by the pandemic. So great going, Dr. Longsworth and team. But I think perhaps, have you found that more students are now looking at professional courses, or is there a mix? What has been the impact and what has been the change in what you've seen?
Well, the growth in continuing and professional education has started some time ago, and that's a reaction to the changing nature of our economies and the world of work. Particularly for our male students, we find that the balance is better. It's still not 50-50, but the balance is definitely better in continuing and professional education courses, shorter courses, more targeted, more vocational type of courses. So we've seen that growth. It is still maybe too early to see whether the recent crises will lead to even more exponential growth, but from all indications, it has not slowed it down. So you can see that we've way exceeded our targets for continuing and professional education. In terms of online learning, this is now going to be the test if a CPE, as we call it, because some of the research that we had done early showed that persons who were doing shorter courses, professional courses, preferred a face-to-face environment. Now with COVID, we have switched our CPE courses to online. And so we are monitoring that to see whether that creates any change, whether it creates a growth, or whether people will pull away because it's usually the more mature persons that are doing CPE. One of the things, though, that we've noticed is that we're able to now reach beyond our normal target market, and we're able to group classes. So perhaps we might have had maybe 3 persons in one island and 5 in another. We're able to, through online, to group those people. And also we're getting people from the diaspora who want to do some of our CPE courses. So I think, again, the disasters have created opportunities for innovation. Our staff have been able to pivot, pardon the overuse of that word, but it really is a nice word, in order to address these needs.
Okay, wonderful. I have a question. Well, it's 3 questions actually, and comments, but I'll just read it and you can respond. I found the attitude of the leadership of UE always to be most forward-thinking, most innovative, not always translating though through to coordinators and tutors to the point of technological dyslexia. Um, how are we looking at technology? Is UE looking to do away with BBC and training tutors? Also, open campus, the student demographic is not sufficiently represented in the marketing of the open campus. I imagine that's what you meant with the more mature students. And well, I'll leave that. There's more, but let's deal with that first.
Yes, that's Dario. Thank you so much for the questions, 3 questions, right? Thank you for the compliment to the leadership. And yes, indeed, we're not going to be able to change everyone, but we do train every tutor and every coordinator who we employ to do the online and support. They are trained. Now the issue is how there will be those that are resistant, but we do monitor it, and we try to ensure that the best persons are put in place for our students. In terms of changing the technologies, of course, Daria, as soon as the technologies come that are affordable, because that's another thing that we need to look at for our region, we have to be careful what technologies we adopt. One, whether they're affordable and sustainable in terms of our own economic circumstances. That is something we have to look at. So while we would have wanted to adopt, the best and latest and cutting edge technologies, we have a reality that we're living within, and that is some things we can't afford. Other things are not necessarily in the best interest of our students, given in the region the lack of adequate bandwidth for some students, the fact that some of them don't have the kind of equipment that could download, a great deal of images and so on. So what we've been doing is looking at new technologies, and we have been using new technologies. We are using Zoom. We do have Canvas, and we've been piloting Canvas as well. So we're looking at the new technologies, and the new relationship that we have with Eon Reality is going to make a difference, because that is new technology that will be able to create courses, images that will engage students even more, that will give you a 3D experience, that will give you the ability to have an augmented reality, virtual reality, access to courses. So we are embracing the technologies, but yes, we do have the challenge of cost, right? So in terms of marketing demographic, I guess you mean in terms of the images. Thank you for that. I will pass that on and say, yes, you're right, that perhaps we need to look at some of the images. And indeed, the future is that we will have to grow, and we'll have to grow outside of our region, because we're a small region. We have a big product, we have a great product, and in terms of our financial sustainability, it's going to be very important that we are able to to grow our enrollment and to move into into the international arena where we can have access to more funds. So we will definitely be growing, and at the moment there is a business plan being put in place for that next phase for the open campus. Okay.
Thank you.
That's that
Yes,
way.
and several persons have mentioned basically the disasters that we've been experiencing in the region. And Darren Bodkin says he's very proud of the UE collaboration with the various CARICOM governments in addressing the disasters this past year, and with the COVID-19 task force, and working together collaboratively and sharing the knowledge that the governments would need. Kathy Lynn also mentions that disasters are going to increase, and
Yes.
feels that leaders need to focus on disaster protection and be proactive. Perhaps you could address, things like that.
Right. Yes, and I want to speak to Kathy, my dear friend. Kathy, thank you for coming to this. And she is a diehard UE person. Her mom used to teach at the Mona campus in the English department, and I remember her mother with great love. But Kathy is very passionate about this, and I agree, Kathy, that we are being much more proactive. In terms of what I have seen over the last 30 years of involvement with the university. I mean, my first UE disaster was Hurricane Gilbert with Professor Layla, Kathy. And from that, we have learned quite a bit. But the disasters, as you have pointed out, have been changing in nature and intensity. And so we learn each time. But we are proactive. In terms of the open campus, we have things in place. We have a protocol now in place that we never had before. And we know immediately what to do and with our students in terms of their academic progress once there is disruption. And that has been maybe 10, not as much as 10 years, maybe about 6 years in the making, and it has been refined each time there is something. In terms of disaster preparedness, the university leads in that area and has a disaster risk management institute, an institute for sustainable development. We're leading not just the region, but the world in the whole issue of climate change. I think our key issue for us in the region is really access to resources. If you think of our Seismic Research Center and the work that they're doing, but they're still quite under-resourced when you compare us to let's say a North American or European equivalent. And that is really the issue. It is making sure that the university, through its excellence, is able to show the world that we deserve the resources and that we can make a huge contribution, not just to our region, but to the world, as we've seen with Dr. Taylor and his climate change group. So a lot of it has to do with resources. But I think that through our global push, the university is being recognized. And we actually lead all of the universities in the International Association of Universities in the climate change research agenda. So it's, we're still a relatively young university by standards, but I think we're on the right path for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a question now from Gersha Pierre, who says, Dr. Luz, has the disruptive model of leadership adopted in response to the pandemic with its need for speed and adaptability affected the level of stakeholder inclusion in decision-making, particularly the inclusion of students and faculty? Has leadership been forced to become less inclusive?
I would say no, Gersha. I know, and let me speak from what I do know. I know that in our response to the pandemic and in other crises, that our student representatives work hand in glove with us. When we formed our COVID task force, the guild president and some of her executive members at the time sat with us every Monday morning at 8 a.m. for our 2-hour meetings as we work through issues. And the Guild has been a constant partner with us In terms of faculty, as you know, we have reached out to our staff all the time. We had town halls. You've seen some of the things that we've done to keep our staff involved, as well as our tutors. And I know the other campuses have had similar experiences. No, so I wouldn't say that we've been forced to become less inclusive. In fact, we've had to be more inclusive because the decision making at this time is much more difficult when you're looking at, such a wide range of people that the pandemic and indeed all of the other disasters affect. So I think it has actually forced leadership of the university to move into a more inclusive model. But I can only speak for the open campus when I say that you never get it 100% right. And sometimes some people feel that you should have consulted them on some things. And there are times in leadership where you have to make a sudden decision, and then you will have to share with others. But for the most part, most of the transformational decisions have been shared, have been worked through, have been discussed with our stakeholders.
Thank you so much. Yes, and I think it's really important that UE continues this consultative process um, agenda, which it has, because it really, in terms of the alumni as well, helps keep people involved and aware, and hopefully will result in lots of donations to the new open campus endowment fund.
Yes, please.
Um, um, Michelle Watts wants to know, how are you addressing formal assessment of students' exams? Have you transitioned to online assessment with the requisite quality controls?
Yes, no, thank you for that question. Actually addressed this to another group of people last night, and they were excited. Again, what comes out of a disaster like this is innovation. And because of the difficulty of having people sit down and do the exams, like you and I remember from the good old days where you're in a room with hundreds of students writing an exam. What the Open Campus has done, and we piloted quite a lot for the university, is to really reimagine how students are assessed. And this is something that educators have been saying for decades, that sit-down formal exams are not the only nor the best way to assess a student's learning. So we have actually come up with what we call in-course assessments as an emergency measure, which has been approved and with all the necessary quality assurance checks and balances. And we've been finding that these methods are actually leading to some very good outcomes for student learning. It's still early days, and as you know, you need to assess your assessment and the outcomes for the student learning in a much more formal way. But we're finding that our students are doing quite well. Surprisingly, we did try to do online exams with proctoring, and there are some, but in terms of the e-proctoring, though, that hasn't been as successful as we had hoped. So we have relied quite a lot on written exams, and some of them are done in a prescribed time, and they're designed in such a way that the student's response really has to be out of his or her own learning experience rather than through plagiarism. And of course, we have the plagiarism software, or through cheating. And so it's actually easier, I think, to cheat in a sit-down exam than it is with some of these that I'm seeing our excellent tutors and coordinators setting. So yes, we are transitioning to new methods of assessment, and we are looking at, as the technology develops, online proctoring, and to see how that can work for those examinations where you do need to have, a sort of synchronous period where the student is sitting in front of, let's say, a camera being looked at. But I think this is going to change the way we look at assessment and the way we teach. And for me, that's a huge benefit of this crisis.
I'm sure it will be a huge benefit for a lot of people. That's exciting news. Okay, and we have Simone Michelle, who is asking, are there new professional courses being explored to provide across all open campuses, given the many new areas and skills demand since COVID-19? If so, what are these areas and skills being examined to meet existing and future demand?
Well, I wouldn't say that it is since COVID-19, but what I refer to as Industry 4.0, this new world, this new virtual digital world, we're definitely moving in that direction. I'm giving you a little bit of a hint. We have a partnership that will be signed off on shortly with an Indian organization, and they have a suite of short courses that are relevant to the skill sets needed for the new workforce. And some of these are technology-based courses, but a lot of them are actually what are called soft skills. You're talking about communication, you're talking about emotional intelligence, because the research is showing, that skills are easy to learn. The internet is full of free courses, but what is not easy to learn is actually how to lead, how to get a team to work, how to collaborate. Those are some of the courses that the post-COVID world needs. And those are the courses that we are pushing already and will be pushing even more in the next few years ahead.
Thank you so much. Well, I think everyone will agree that this has been a very, very good first inaugural top tier talk and that we've had wonderful interaction. I should just mention that we have um, folks online from Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, and others as well who I haven't seen yet in the chat. But I think we have all learned a lot, and I would really like to sincerely thank you, Luz, for taking the plunge, leading us off in this in this new series. But from the reactions of everyone, I think they really appreciate the fact that the university and top tier management is welcoming this new interaction with students, with alumni,
Yes.
and I look forward to having others come and share as well. I'd also like to take the time to thank Karina Dice, who is a campus alumni officer at the Mona campus, who always helps with these webinars, and to thank, of course, Sandra Griffith Carrington, who is always a great support. I've dubbed her Supportive Sandra, and she knows why. And I'd like to thank as well. Oh, Barbados is saying, yes, we're here. Barbados is on the line too. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. The session has been recorded and will be available. And we hope that you will continue to keep this interaction going and to let us know what your concerns are, what your suggestions and recommendations are, because the alumni are an important part of the UE family. And it's great to know that top leadership are concerned about what you think and want to know about your ideas. Oh, I see that New York is on the line as well. Everybody is
If I
showing now.
may, Celia, before you sign off, just to say thank you to everyone for your very thoughtful comments and suggestions, recommendations. We want to thank you for the support. We feel the support. Many times you may not hear enough from us, but I'm really happy that we'll have this kind of forum where you can interact and see what it is that we're doing on the ground, because I know sometimes it seems that you don't know what UE is really doing, and I'm happy to have shared some of the things the Open Campus is doing. Let me just say thanks again to the alumni for the launch of the endowment fund. One of the major issues that worries me about our region is how our students are going to be able to continue to afford their education. And this is an area that, every civilization has had to deal with. All the US and Canada, there are foundations, endowment funds, many of those are old institutions. So you're actually building for the future, or I think, as Sandra puts it, that it's your legacy, and that when those come after you, you know, they will find that we have been faithful to them. So we may not see it, but I really applaud you for starting that first step towards building a solid foundation for future UE graduates. Thank you so much. I know Sandra has all the information about the endowment fund, which she will be happy to send to you. But I just want to express my thanks and thanks on behalf of the entire UE leadership for the support of the alumni in all times. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Longsworth. It's really been a pleasure. I'd like as well to echo and thank everyone for joining, most of whom are alumni of the institution, and we look forward to many more. So I'll say goodbye to everyone. Continue, please, all of you, to keep safe until we meet again. Have a good evening or
Thank
morning.
you.
Bye, everyone.